Well, today I am inspired and excited to introduce to our audience Nathan Ernsberger. Nate has an interesting story about how he developed a gratitude practice that, as we'll find out, has really been transformative for him individually, professionally, and with his family, basically. So before we begin, let me just give you a little background about Nate. Nate is the director of strategic partnerships at Red Rock Entertainment, a company whose vision is to empower creativity. Nate coaches high-performing communicators to become better storytellers and to understand how their audiences respond to the stories that they do tell. Nate is a husband, a father, and also a musician and a writer. And I've been fortunate to hear some of his songs and his poetry that he writes, and I'm hoping that he'll be willing to share some of those with us too. It's just an amazing gift that he has in addition to everything else. And today is Nate's chance to tell his story. So we're really excited to have you here. Just by way of background also, you know, what we learned from the spiritual teachers and masters, you know, past, present, and current, when I look back, it's like there's four spiritual lifestyles that people to integrate and to find inner peace, balance, and wholeness. One is solitude, you know, getting away from the noise of the world on a daily basis, be it walking in nature, meditating, writing, singing, whatever it is that connects us with ourselves and the divine. The other, spiritual reading, reading books and other writings that kind of stretch us to grow spiritually. The other is community. Who do we surround ourselves with? And then also, what are our spiritual gifts that we have and discover to use them that are life-giving for us? And today's conversation really is in that solitude box about Nate's experience of developing this gratitude practice that has really become an important piece of his spiritual growth. So Nate, if you want to kind of begin and just give us a story about your spiritual growth, like, you know, as a kid, as a teenager, and adult, what were the things that shaped and formed you? Who are the people in your life that say these were the teachers and the faith traditions that really formed and shaped you? Just give us the background of your story.
Yeah, well, thanks, Brian. I'm a bit of a mutt, and I think most of us are mutts in one way or another. But for me, you know, I grew up in a Methodist and Pentecostal and Brethren tradition. Mm-hmm. You know, people who are familiar with all of those will go, huh? How do you mix all of that? The church I went to up until I was about 10 years old was Methodist based, but dabbled in the charismatic gifts that had come out of the Jesus movement. Mm-hmm. And our family then ended up at a church that was what's called body ministry oriented. In other words, there wasn't a pastor, there was a board of elders. And that's why I refer to it as brethren based. That's some of the brethren community leads that way, where there are elders who work together, but there's no single pastor. And this particular church, it was pretty small. It was a community of 100 to 150 people. Okay. And it was very charismatic. Some people would say more Pentecostal than charismatic. Of course, Pentecostal includes charismatic, but you know, those words have changed a lot over the last couple of decades, right? They've morphed a lot. You know, if you go into not just Protestant churches, but Catholic churches today, you'll find people singing the exact same songs, often songs that are less than 30 years old in terms of when they were written, that have come out of what would loosely be called the charismatic tradition in the United States, right? Wow. That was a lot of my upbringing. There was a gift that I received at age 17, 18, when I got involved playing music and traveling in the Lutheran church. So for somebody who had grown up, in the churches I grew up in, we referred to Lutherans, Catholics, Episcopalians, anybody who had structure. Those were pejoratively referred to as stand-up, sit-down churches, right? So like we would go to visit my grandparents for Christmas, and you know, at the Christmas Eve service, like we'd stand up and then we'd sit down, and then we'd stand up and then we'd kneel, and then we'd stand up and then we sit down again. And the whole time you were being told, like, okay, now's when you stand, now's when you sit. Yeah. So, but in our way of doing things, like in the free spaces I grew up in, like nobody told you what to do. You were just led by the Spirit, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Now, So I had grown up in that way where it's like, be led by the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot lacking when you don't have structure and reasons. I mean, there are pros and cons to everything, right? Like,
sure.
We're not going to dig deep into, how messy either of the options can be, because it's not just one or the other.
Yeah, it's kind of that both and, isn't it? Yeah,
there's a both and.
Yeah.
But what was missing in what I was given in my growing up years was some sense of why do we do things in this way, and there was an anti-intellectualism in the churches I grew up in that encouraged people to just trust the Spirit. Now, to trust the Spirit can mean lots of things and can be very healthy, but in the tradition I grew up in, it left out a lot. And so the reason I say the gift I was given was some time in the Lutheran church. I joined what would be considered like a supplemental youth ministry. Lutheran churches, if anybody in our audience knows about the history of the Lutheran church, Lutheran churches and the really three main synods of the Lutheran church in the United States, have struggled to change and adapt over the last couple of decades, as many other churches have, and started to see not just a decline in attendance, in involvement of different generations. This organization that I worked for was called Lutheran Youth Encounter. And what they offered to local churches, whether they had volunteer youth pastors or paid youth pastors, regardless of size or anything else for the congregation, they offered supplemental youth ministry. They offered a band of 6 or 7 people who would come in and play a concert and do a puppet show and hang out with a youth group for a night. It was fun. It was lighthearted. It could also be really serious. There was a depth to it. The gift to me was that I was with 6 other people who had all been raised Lutheran, and they had a framework for grace that I hadn't been given growing up. And I began to learn about certain traditions within the church, certain practices, certain rhythms that were incredibly life-giving because I hadn't experienced them before. I remember the first time I experienced an Ash Wednesday service. And growing up, coming from a Pentecostal church where we thought of, those stand-up, sit-down people as kind of clueless, just doing things for the tradition of it. When I would see somebody, say at my high school who had ashes on their forehead in the spring, I was like, oh, it's one of those like weird religious people who don't really know what they're doing, right? When I experienced an Ash Wednesday service for the first time, and it was explained to me that from dust you came, and to dust you shall return, and that we actually saved the ashes from last year's Palm Sunday service, and those are the ashes we're putting on your forehead today, and this is an opportunity to pause and remember where you came from, and remember where you're going, and to consider your gratitude in the middle of it. Like the richness of that experience in the scope of spending time with people who had been steeped in a religious culture that was first and foremost founded on the concept of grace and understanding what grace is and how it operates. That was just a huge gift to me.
Yeah, neat.
Part of what it gave me was a desire to be a bridge builder. So I've found myself in ministry settings, all sorts of ministry leadership opportunities over the last couple of decades. And I have found that I'm able to relate to people no matter what their tradition is, because I was given the gift of several different kind of formative traditions in my, not just early childhood, but in my early adult years. And that, that's given me a desire to continue to deepen what my own practices are in a way that is really healthy and formative, right? I mean, I've had a deep hunger ever since I was a kid to know why we're doing what we're doing.
Sure.
That could also be called like being a bit of a rebel. Like I'm always going to push back and go, why are we doing it that way? Like it's a bit of a gift to go, I don't think so. No, like, so I want to know that what I'm showing up for when I'm singing something, or when I'm showing up, even to read the Psalms, which is one of my practices right now. Why? What does this do for me? How do I show up in such a way that this is formative in me? Because I want to continue to be somebody who lives a whole and healthy life. And if I'm going to call myself a Christian, the word Christian is refers to being like Christ, or refers to being a little Christ. There's a lot there to aspire to, right?
Yeah.
On so many levels.
Yeah.
The
word that rises up in me is authentic. Yeah. That sense of your desire to be authentic like Christ was. And
there's a big piece of that for me, just like in terms of my personality, that I want to be authentic and true in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so that is what's led me, to get back to your original question. It's what's led me into going, what are the practices that for me will be sustaining and sustainable? And that's part of what's led me to leaning into a gratitude practice that has grown for me over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So tell me about the practices. When Nyquist, I interviewed him. He talks about, we've lost the spiritual practices in many of the faith traditions, and there's a desire now, a resurgence, where each one of us are finding our spiritual practices that connect us deeper on a daily basis in that solitude space, and also as a community, but also where we find the spiritual practices that on a daily basis connect us with our souls, with God and ourselves. So when did you discover spiritual practices, and how has that evolved? And the gratitude practice, tell us about the evolution of all those parts of you.
In terms of practices, I was told growing up, you need a quiet time, right? That you need to get up every morning as early as possible, maybe even earlier, and read your Bible to start your day well. And like, that was the first kind of approach to, you have to have a practice. Whether that worked for me or not, growing up always felt like a struggle. It felt like a should. Okay. I'm reading this book that I don't truly understand, and I'm trying to understand it, and dealing with, any baggage that's in, the religious tradition I was in on a regular basis. All that to say that it took me a while to start to go, what practices are going to be helpful and formative for me, not just because somebody else said you should do this. Mm-hmm. Somebody else said you should spend 30 minutes a day reading your Bible. To me, I'm like, well, where do I start? And so somebody can say, well, start here. Here's a good tip. Here's some options. It will be positive, I'm sure, if I spend 30 minutes a day reading my Bible, right? Like, you're not going to go wrong. Right. But is that the best practice that's going to form me and help me in the best way? Not necessarily, right? Perfect example. And I was just reflecting about this yesterday. I've actually found much more life in the scripture, Old and New Testament scriptures, when I hear it by somebody else who can explain it really well, even if all they're doing is a direct reading. I first realized that it could come alive in this way when I heard a Shakespearean actor doing parts of the New Testament in King James language.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
It was mind-blowing, because this guy who understood the Shakespearean structure, the Old English structure and language and delivery, and he brought his ability to do that to language that was written in that era. And it just came alive in ways that it never did when I was just reading it for myself, because I didn't have that background.
Sure.
So again, all that to say, my gratitude practice actually rose from a need in me, a deep need in me. Part of my story growing up is that I felt like there was very little joy in my life. We can all interpret our childhoods from multiple different points of view, right? I had a very traumatic childhood in certain ways, if I look at them from that angle. As I grow, I hope I'm finding ways to look at it from different angles and go, oh, well, I can see it maybe in a different healthy light. But most of my life, I've interpreted most of my childhood, my upbringing, as pretty traumatic. And part of that, as I was trying my best to follow Jesus as a kid, as an adolescent, I always struggled with the idea that there was joy in following Jesus because I didn't feel joyful. I felt like that was really, really missing for me. And I was sitting with a therapist who suggested that I fake it till you make it.
There you go.
And what he was saying was there are neurologic things happening for you when you put a smile on your face that are connected to not just intentionally smiling, but wanting to smile. Like there's something physiological that's happening when you smile. And so there was a season when I went, okay, I'm not feeling joyful right now. I'm not feeling grateful right now. I'm however going to shift, and I'm going to intentionally sit with the physical practice of smiling. And actually, when I began that, what happened for me was that I began to weep. The first thing it brought up in me was even more sadness, even more of a sense of loss. And go ahead.
Was that a cleansing, do you think, or what was that movement in you?
You know, when I was experiencing that, it actually reminded me of what I do when I coach speakers. I've actually coached some comedians to say, you know, you're asking people to laugh all the time, but you realize that laughter and tears, they're like second cousins, first cousins, siblings, like they're right there together. And so if you're going to take people to a place of vulnerability, you can do it with laughter and you can do it with tears. And if you learn to switch back and forth between the two, there's something effective to be done there. Or if you got people laughing and they're moving, and then all of a sudden you sit down on the front of the stage and you hang your feet over the edge and you lean in, and now we talk about something serious. You've triggered with your body for people that you're going somewhere different, but you're really going to the same place.
Interesting.
It reminded me of that when I began to smile and found myself weeping. It was like there was a deeper cleansing that needed to happen that I couldn't get to by continuing to just like hang on to my grief or my sadness or my brokenness. But there was a point at which, as I continued to smile, it's like the sadness went away. You know, correlation, causation, I'm not too concerned about it. Sure. What happened was, there was a transformation in me as I realized when I'm feeling down for some reason, or when I'm really struggling or anxious about something, if I will pause and put a smile on my face and force those cheeks to smile, it actually triggers something in my brain.
Yeah. Wow.
That was like part one.
Sure.
Part two was then, okay, if I will intentionally write things down that I'm grateful for, then they become a reminder that life is at the core creative and generative. It doesn't start out broken, right? It doesn't start out, no baby comes into the world with the expectation that life's going to be horrible. No parent, brings a child into the world thinking, I sure hope this kid's a mess. Right? Doctrines of original sin and all that. We'll let other people debate like how all those doctrines and stuff come about. But I know this as a parent, that my hope for my kid when they came into the world was that they were going to have an amazing, awesome life. And that my first response watching my kids take their first breath was overwhelming joy and love and gratitude at the creativity that was there. The reminder that when I start my day or pause at any point in my day and go, here are 5 random things I'm grateful for. Mm-hmm. The reminder to my brain that life is, that the list of things I could be grateful for is endless.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard, it's interesting, as spirituality and neuroscience begin to communicate well with each other.
Yeah.
Neuroscience would say, I love the analogy of when we are grateful or when we smile, when we practice gratitude, literally the cortex of our brain rewires itself. And it's almost like on social media, when you start clicking on different sites or advertisements, there's a logarithm that gets created. Yeah. And it's the same thing in our brain when we begin to practice gratitude, be it smiling, as you said, and then secondly, writing it down and practicing it. Literally, the logarithms in our brain start refocusing the lens through which we see the world. So, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm aware of some of that, but I'm no neuroscientist. I just know it's been my experience.
Yeah,
And I know that I've been able to train myself to think about 5 things I'm grateful for when I first wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's a great start to my day.
Yeah. Physically, what do you lay in bed and before you get out of bed and name those 5 things, or do you sit in the quiet? I mean, how do you physically begin?
Yeah. I try to do it before I get out of bed. I tried to and I've told myself, as I'm going to sleep, when you wake up in the morning, first thing, think of 5 things you're grateful for before you get out of bed. And just try to continue to pattern myself that way, to practice those habits so that they become habitual, so that they will shape me as much as I shape them. And I mean, it's been a gift because it has helped me look differently at the opportunity I have in each day. I mean, you and I are both first and foremost creative. And when I can be reminded of that the first thing I actually get to do is create a new thought, even in my own head.
That's true. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I can either let, the anxiety and the worry of the day take over quickly, because that is a natural pattern. Life is full of hard things we have to do, or, whatever might come next. But if I start by going, intention, here's what I'm grateful for today. I am grateful for the bird I hear outside right now. I am grateful for the wind chime banging against the garage. I'm grateful for my wife's warm body in the bed next to me. I'm grateful for that breath I just took. I'm grateful for the coffee I'm going to have later. I've just set a pattern of positivity, and putting my heart in the right space. Right. And there's so much more I can then go into as I start to write out the deeper things, or as I begin to name 5 people I'm grateful for as a means of praying for them. There are just so many endless ways that gratitude can shape me as I'm intentional about it.
And how has that evolved? So it sounds like to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but first you just began with the intentional smile, okay, I'll fake it till I make it. And then it's I'm going to lay in bed for 5 minutes and name what I'm grateful for. Then you wrote them down. You sometimes write them down.
I've got a journal, and when I sit down with my journal every day, it's one of the things I challenge myself to do is first write down 5 things I'm grateful for. Even if I've done those, 5 things when I got out of bed that morning, or if in a quiet time I named them again to myself, it's how many times throughout my day can I pause and name 5 things I'm grateful for?
Yeah. Wow.
And just let that be shaping.
Yeah. Yeah. So then when you get out of bed, has it evolved where you spend a little bit of quiet time before you go out the door, or from time to time, or?
Yeah, I several days a week have an early morning fitness practice outside in the rain or the snow or whatever, because I'm a bit of a sucker for punishment.
A wild man.
and I've chosen to sit, just as the rest of the house is dark, to just sit in the chair I inherited from my grandpa in a corner of the living room, all the lights off, I actually set 2 alarms so that my first alarm goes off, wakes me up, but I don't even have to look at my phone to like set another timer. I've got another alarm that goes off a half hour later that reminds me when I'm done sitting in that chair.
Yeah. Wow.
So I've got this practice 2 or 3 days a week right now where, it's like I'm sitting in that chair in the dark for a half hour. And in that, just going, okay, I'm waking up, I'm sitting up. I know I got to get my shoes on and go out into the rain. I'm going to do this. Like part of it is just psyching myself up for the day.
Yeah.
Part of it is just listening to my breath. Part of it is continuing to name, now that I'm a little more alert, continuing to name the things I'm grateful for. And I've been able to connect that too to some other really practical habits of not looking at social media or news early in the day, and these productivity, how to have good brain health habits, but they're grounded in first and foremost naming what I'm grateful for, and then it's really not until later in the morning that I find myself sitting with my journal and going, okay, now I'm going to write some of these down.
Wow, that's awesome. And it sounds like it's spilled into the, they say that there's the contemplative part of our day, that quiet time when we're connecting, and then the active part of the day when we're out the door doing our thing or at home doing our thing. So has that gratitude practice slowly evolved and spilled into the active part of your day? Do you sense that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I hit a point where I have to make a hard decision, or when I'm struggling with thinking about something and not quite being able to like get there, even then it's like, all right, let me pause again. Let me just breathe for a couple of minutes. Let me write down 5 things I'm grateful for. It's something I've been able to use as a reset for myself.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
And I have found that I come back to it, that if I find myself, lost in anxiety or worry about something, I'll realize, oh, it's been 2 days and I haven't written down 5 things I'm grateful for. Okay, come back to that and reset there.
Yeah, that God nudge.
Yeah, and it is also often connected to going, okay, stop and smile again. Like, there are these physical, visceral resets that I don't think that we can't discount. I mean, this is spiritual practice, right? Like we spiritually are not disconnected from the fact that we are physical. And again, there are tons of people who've done all sorts of great reading and thinking and writing and talking about, how this dualism emerges in culture. I'm not too worried about it. I just know the reality of it for me is my physical action, my discipline, my spiritual practice is my physical practice, and vice versa.
Yeah.
That it is naming what I'm grateful for. It is pausing to smile and to remind myself I am made for joy. And I have capacity for joy, even if I've spent a lot of my life going, am I ever going to see or find the joy I want? Okay, I may have to create it for myself and let that naturally develop and grow, starting from something very, very intentional.
Yeah. How has your gratitude practice helped you through challenging times? I mean, it's easy to be grateful when the sun is shining and our family's healthy and the world is great and I got a job and everything's great. But, how has it impacted your ability to walk through challenging times, the gratitude practice?
Yeah, it has provided balance. You don't have to be grateful for the thing that currently sucks.
Exactly.
Right?
Be honest.
Like,
yeah. Exactly.
You can find the silver lining in it. You can find the gift in it. But for me, it's been just as okay to go, well, if these are the really difficult things right now, and maybe they're too difficult to even deal with, well, then let me name 5 things that I am grateful for that are disconnected, but they bring balance to it. They remind me that, okay, I'm losing my job, but I've got food on the table. I've got this hard conversation to have, but my wife and kids are here and they're healthy, and there's a bird chirping outside my window and they don't care about these circumstances at all. Like it's it's coming back to basics and to foundational things.
Yeah. So it provides balance to the difficult times, it sounds like. Yeah.
It does. And I also don't say that with a sense that, I can kind of make that empty promise to somebody who is dealing with deep depression and go, well, if you'll just name 5 things you're grateful for, everything will be awesome. Like, no, like it's not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. It's a practice that has helped me be grounded and has grown in me over time.
Yeah.
It's also not the only thing I can do as a spiritual practice to be healthy, right? It's just one piece of what I believe and what I've experienced is shaping me into hopefully being a better husband and father and son and brother and friend. That if I have part of my regular DNA that I am grateful, regardless of the circumstances, I'm looking for something to be grateful for. Sure. And that I'm intentionally joyful, man, those are some great places to start.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like, in the hard times, I think to be grateful, granted being authentic, which is, I'm not liking losing my job in the middle of COVID or whatever the circumstances is, but there's that trust that somehow we'll get through it. It's what I'm hearing in you is that integration of what you mentioned earlier is grace, that somehow you create space in you to quiet yourself in the middle of the difficult times, that you can kind of listen to that deeper spirit, within you. Okay, how are we going to get through this?
Yeah.
That opens up because we're not sitting here filled with worry, like, oh my God, Chicken Little, the sky's going to fall. I mean, it could, but we create an inner space maybe with gratitude. And you mentioned reading the Psalms and some of the other practices. We create a space for grace I just think it's that wisdom comes in when we quiet ourselves. It's like this. The Holy Spirit comes and grabs us by the back of the neck and says, okay, this is where we're going. Okay, even if I don't know where I'm going. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. And what it reminds me of is how much we all have to learn to pray at different ways in different times of our lives, right? That, Anne Lamott, says that there are 3 foundational prayers: help, thanks, wow.
There you go.
And that they all come in handy at different times. But if you got one of those in your pocket, you can pray at any point. There are seasons in my life where I haven't known how to pray. And if I sit and begin and go, I am grateful for these things, that's prayer. Like, it is giving gratitude. It's one element of what it is to sit and listen and to go and to be reminded of the things that I am grateful for. Prayer, to sit and go, what should I do right now besides listen, has been one of those other challenging things in my life where I go, what is prayer? It's been different things at different seasons. And this gratitude practice has also connected to the way that music and singing for me has often been the way that I've prayed or contemplated. One of the little ditties that, came to mind in the last year or two that I often find myself singing to myself is rooted in that gratitude practice. And I'll find myself, usually when I'm alone, but sometimes my kids will be like, Dad, what are you doing right now? Oh, I'm just singing to myself. And it's just this. What a gift this day is. What a gift this day is. What a gift. What a gift this day is. And that's it. But adding that, okay, I'm naming what a gift this day is. I'm naming it. But then I'm using the gift I've been given of a voice that can carry a tune. He who prays, or he who sings praise twice, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just going, how do I make this more personal to who I am and what's creative in me right now? And I've got this little tune. And if, and sometimes to me, that's praying without ceasing. It's just letting that song come up for me during the day.
Yeah. What did David do? He sang the Psalms on his harp. Yeah, exactly. And transformative. It's interesting to me that the sense of gratitude seems to be a resurgence. So, I just look backwards. Cicero says that gratitude is one of the greatest virtues. Brother David Steindl-Rast, who wrote the book Gratitude, the Heart of Prayer, he says to praise, to bless, that's a reason for living, just to be filled with that, whatever the circumstances are. Yeah. And has actually created this gratefulness.org website that is all about gratitude and videos and different things. It's interesting, Mindful Magazine, more of a secular, their December issue is all about mindfulness, how mindfulness can transform your life. So, and then the neuroscience that supports that there is something physically that happens in our brain. So, what you're experiencing, it seems to me, it came from that little nudge of I want to experience more joy in my life. It sounds like it started with a smile practice. Can you fake it till you make it? Just put that smile on your face. Evolved into laying in bed for 5 minutes and naming 5 things, journaling that, carrying that into the day, and now a little bit of contemplative time in the morning, and then singing and spending time. Yeah. What is gratitude to you? It's like saying, who is God? That's bigger than we'll ever words will ever. But if you had to say, gratitude for Nate is, what is it? A metaphor, a word, an image?
Yeah, it is the reminder that we are surrounded by gifts, that life at its core is full of gift. Of course, even when it's hard, right? Yeah. You and I live in a very privileged position in the world where our needs are met, so much so that we have, more than we could possibly even want all around us. Most of the world doesn't live the way we live in terms of having needs met. Mm-hmm. And I've spent a lot of time interacting with people who live in desperate physical poverty, and they are still loaded with joy and gratitude. Not always. There are people I've observed in deep physical poverty who are grinding it out and are in pain. And I don't want to over glorify or oversimplify something like the gifts of poverty. But when you live in lack of one sort or another, I find there's often a compensation. I remember visiting the home of a woman in Tanzania whose home was made of sticks and mud and cardboard. Small place, smoky little fire, kids who were malnourished, struggling to eke out a living. And this woman had dried flowers stuck, a little bouquet of dried flowers stuck in the cardboard like that was making the wall of her home. And I'll never forget seeing it and going, this woman wanted to make her humble home beautiful for the visitors who showed up today. And she knew what beauty looked like, and it was those dried flowers. Like, it doesn't matter how much need you are in, there is always an invitation to be grateful for something, even if it's just your next breath. And for all of us, our next breath will eventually not show up, right? But if the most simple thing I am grateful for is my next breath, I will always have that until that's gone.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And to me, it's this reminder that I can always, if nothing else, I can be grateful for my next breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's right there in front of me. What can I be grateful for right now when everything else is falling apart? I can be grateful for my next breath.
How do you teach that? You as a husband and a father, how do you model that? How do you teach the next generation or those in your community? How do you?
Well, first of all, as a husband and a father, I'm often just yelling about the laundry or the dirty dishes or, stop.
Oh, you're human like me. Oh, good.
Yeah, Like, why didn't you take the dog out? Like I'm not superhuman just because I have an ability. I've cultivated an ability to be grateful sometimes.
Sure. Right.
How to, my wife and I were just talking about this the other day. I grew up in a home where you paused your head, you bowed your head, you held hands, you fought about whether to have to hold hands with your brother because he's gross, but the dinner time practice was we grab hands and we bow our heads and somebody says grace. Mm-hmm. One of the shifts that my wife and I decided to make in our own home a couple of years ago, we actually stopped doing that. Mm-hmm. And instead go around the table, and before we eat, each person says something they're grateful for. Mm, wow. That's our practice whenever we sit to eat. And then after the last person has said what they're grateful for, all right, thanks, let's eat. But like a couple of days ago, as our teenagers were kind of fighting us on, well, I'm grateful for the food on my plate. I'm like, okay, great. But now you're just like chucking that one out to get it over with, which is the exact same thing that we're trying to, combat by going, let's not just pause and bow our heads and say, thank you, Jesus, for this food, bless it to my belly. Like whatever it is, we want to show up with intentionality. So if what we're going to do right now is bow our heads and pause, and somebody is going to say, thank you, God, for these gifts and this amazing food and these people, then I want that to come from a healthy, whole place. I don't want it to be just again, I'm looking for that authenticity. So there is a practice that we have around our dinner table that I ask every person, and we do this with guests. It's also, here's what's interesting. It's an easy on-ramp for guests. Not every guest who comes into our home is going to be somebody who would go, I want to pray for the dinner right now. But every guest who comes into our home, when I say, hey, what's something you're grateful for today? Every single guest can wholeheartedly embrace that and participate in it.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's been, our primary practice with our kids at mealtime.
Yeah. Good for you.
Hey, what are you grateful for? And we're often going, yeah, I know you're grateful for the dog. What's something unique about today that you can pause and think about and go, oh, I'm grateful for this today.
Yeah.
All right, let's eat.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. Just that, it's practical spirituality, isn't it? I mean, we've made it so heady at times.
Is there any other kind? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what we got to bring it back to that perhaps. Yeah, exactly. So what would you say to a viewer who is like, yeah, Nate, I appreciate what you're saying. What would you say would be the first step that someone says, I'd like to develop a gratitude practice. I'd like to change my neurons in my head and heart. What would you say to a viewer that says, yeah, what would be the next one or two steps that you'd say they might take?
Yeah. Set yourself a timer and write down 5 things. Like it didn't start for me with waking up and all of a sudden being grateful for 5 things in the morning and that being the automatic habit every day. Yeah. It did start with the intentionality of going, oh, I'm going to begin a habit of pausing at a specific time and writing down 5 things. So just start.
Yeah.
Stop and write down 5 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be complicated, and they can be the same things you were grateful for yesterday.
Yeah.
But it's the intentionality that triggers the reminder for yourself and does, like you were saying, triggers your brain to work in new ways.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. How can people connect with you? Are you on Instagram, Facebook? Well, how could people, if they want to reach out and be grateful for you, how could they do that?
Yeah. If somebody wants to, see the pictures I post of my kids on Instagram, I'm on Instagram at Nate Erns, Nateerns. But I'm not building a platform or anything. I don't have anything to sell. But yeah, if somebody wants to be friends there, my wife bakes amazing pie that I'm grateful for, and you can see some pictures there.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah. Just as Thanksgiving's coming pretty soon here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Nate, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your soul, your story with us, and may you continue to shine and keep that big smile on your face.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
Appreciate it.